Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to give it just a minute for folks to get into the webinar, but welcome. Thank you for being here for the Wisconsin Reading Screener Overview webinar. So we'll give it just a minute. We appreciate you making time today. I know schedules are busy this time of year. I imagine this has been a very busy week for everybody. Okay.
So excited to see you all.
All right, so let's make it official and officially get started here. So welcome. My name is Denise Ricks. I'll be with you today. I'm a learning facilitator here at Pearson. We also have a Pearson team on the call here today to help work in the background to answer questions and to send you some information, send you some links and some contact information as we go through today. We also are going to have some feedback from some DPI folks as well. So just know that you'll be getting the information that comes to you, answering your specific questions. We have a team working to make sure that we get the most updated information to you. I do want to mention here that, of course, these materials are copyrighted, but also we know that you are likely trying to get this information, learn this information, and then turn it around in a very tight timeline. So there will be a turnkey deck that is coming to principals. That'll be coming to you soon. So that will be via your email. So I hope that you will follow along today, take notes as you need to, but then also know that you'll be getting access to a turnkey deck, and also know that this is being recorded. So if you need to go back and review anything, I'll show you a little bit later this morning where you can find the recording, but you can access that, or if you have somebody that you know would need to hear or see part of the information. So. Okay, I also want to let you know that we're going to be going through a lot of information. And I know, again, that this is a busy time of year. You've got a lot of things on your plate, a lot of things to cover. So just take a moment and kind of ground yourself in AimswebPlus, using that for your Wisconsin reading screener or early reading screener. Know that as we go through this today, if it helps you to watch, and like I said, just take notes, that's great. If you have access to a training account already, then please, I invite you to log in, and then you can kind of keep one eye on my screen, one eye on your screen or your tab, and you can try it yourself. So either way, whatever works for you. But again, just know that you can also follow up with the recording later. Okay, here's what we're going to cover today. We are going to make sure that everybody understands how AimswebPlus platform can be used for the assessment in the context of the Wisconsin Act 20 legislation. So we want to make sure that everybody's clear of what's involved. Then we're going to talk about how to, we'll familiarize you with some basic rostering information. I know that is likely a pressing question, so we'll talk about that. And also just some general platform understanding of how to get into AimsWeb and how to move around. And then I'll demonstrate for you how to collect the data. So depending on the grade level of the student, the way that we collect the data looks different. So I'll show you what both of those pathways look like and what's involved there. So that's what we're hoping to do this morning. Okay, now if you are brand new to AimswebPlus, just a little basic information here to set the stage. AimswebPlus is a secure web-based data management system. It lives on a platform that I'll log into and show you. It is used for benchmarking and progress monitoring. The way that you're going to use it to meet the requirements for Act 20 are going to be for the benchmarking or the screening side of things. You'll see the language in AimsWeb shows benchmarking, but whenever you see benchmarking on any of the screens, then just know that that's referring to that screening. Okay. Once you have collected some data, then you can generate group level reports if you need to see multiple students and where they're falling on, where their scores are putting them. Also, you can pull individual student information. And also, the term measures is what we're using to talk about subtests. So you'll see when we go in and talk about the different measures, for example, the oral reading fluency measure, that's one of the subtests that we are referring to. Now, again, just as a reminder, Wisconsin Act 20 states that a single reading readiness screener will be administered to Wisconsin students enrolled in public districts and independent charter schools in grades 4K through grade 3, beginning in this 2024-25 school year. So as such, here's the matrix of measures that would be required to meet that legislation. So let me just take a minute and kind of orient you to what you see here on the screen. AimsWeb has a lot of measures that are not going to be required for you. So when you go into the platform, you will see, for example, math measures, written expression measures, other even reading that would fall under the reading umbrella measures that are not part of what needs to be included for your screeners for Act 20. Here you can see, if you can see 4K in fall and spring, 5K or kindergarten for fall, mid-year, and then the spring, first grade, fall, mid-year, spring, and so on. You can see second grade and third grade. These checks here are showing you which measures would need to be administered for those students. So here you can see for your 4K, you've got initial sounds in the fall, and then in the spring, initial sounds and letter word sound fluency. You can see here, for example, in first grade, in the fall, phoneme segmentation, letter word sound fluency, auditory vocabulary, and then right down here, oral reading fluency. For second and third grade, the required components are going to be vocabulary and then oral reading fluency. Okay, so you can see those here. Now, I just want to mention, I will show you here today exactly what it's going to look like and what teachers or test administrators are going to need to do to actually collect this information or administer these tests. But just notice here about the time that it's going to take. Some of them are timed tests. So for example, letter word sound fluency is a 1-minute test. It stops at 1 minute. Some of these other measures, for example, the initial sounds, that is, it's an untimed test, but you can plan for it to take about 2 to 3 minutes per student. So that's what this matrix can help you kind of gauge the time that's going to be needed for the measures that are required for the grade levels that you need to administer. And then the last thing I want to say here is the administration methods. So we have DRFs and we have TestNav. There's one TestNav measure. Everything else is a DRF. So the DRFs are the digital record forms, meaning that test needs to be administered face-to-face with the teacher or whoever is administering that on a device. They have a digital record form, a digital form where they are collecting the information. And then the student is sitting in front of them. So it's a one-on-one assessment. The student is in front of them, either responding to questions that the teacher is asking, or if they are referring to, there would be like a stimulus form or a stimulus paper that you would put in front of the student. Then they would be reading or responding, whatever it is there. So for oral reading fluency, for example, you're going to put a hard copy passage in front of a student and ask them to read, and you would be scoring on your screen in real time. You would take that paper and then for the next student, put that same piece of paper in front of them too. So if you can kind of visualize what that's going to look like. And then just for second and third grade, for the vocabulary measure, that one is delivered through TestNav, and we'll take a closer look at that here in just a few minutes. But TestNav means that the students are going to be logging on a device and going into the TestNav platform, accessing the test that has been assigned to them, which in this case is vocabulary. and taking the test there. So they'll take the test online. At the end, they'll click when they end that assessment and submit their scores. Those scores will then be synced back over to AimswebPlus. Okay, so hopefully that just gives you a little bit here of structure to hang on to. I hope it'll make even more sense as we go through this today. So again, if you're taking notes, there's the digital record form. That's the way that we're going to collect data, or we're going to administer these assessments for everything pre-K, everything kindergarten, everything first grade. And also, it's the way that we're going to collect information for oral reading fluency for your second and third graders. So that digital record form, that face-to-face assessment, okay? And then TestNav needs to be used to administer just the vocabulary and just to your second and third grade students, okay? All right, so I want you to take a look here at the windows. Now, there are a couple of, when we talk about the windows, there are a couple of different parameters that we're looking through. So let me just make sure that we talk through this. So AimsWeb has very wide open fixed windows, but some very wide open windows that really, at any given time in a year, there is a window open, a benchmark window or a screening window open. So you can see here, AimsWeb has the window open for fall. It started on August 1st and it goes to November 30th. Okay. Now, within that window, in order to meet the requirements for Wisconsin Act 20, then no more than 45 days into the school year would be when you would locally need to make sure you're collecting your fall benchmark screening. And then here you can see winter. AimsWeb's winter window opens December 1st and it goes through March 15th. The language of Wisconsin Act 20 says that you need to do a middle of the year screening. So you can decide based on all the other assessments that might be going on, exactly what that's going to be for you locally, if that's going to be December or January, but just know that that's the time frame generally that we're looking at. And then for the spring, AimswebPlus window for the spring opens on March 16th. And it stays open through July 31st, actually. The Wisconsin Act 20 language here says that the testing needs to happen on or before the 45th day prior to the last day of school. Okay, so you'll want to make sure that you are, again, identifying windows that you're going to use locally to actually collect this information. But if you're following this Act 20 and legislation requirements, it will fall within what AimsWeb offers as far as windows being available to you. The other thing I want to say is just for clarification, the measures that are required for which grade levels and what time of year, fall, mid-year, or spring. Notice that administration is optional for fall, of course, here for the 4K students, and then it's not required mid-year. So then for 4K, it will be required in the spring. And then for your kindergarten through third grade, it will be required fall, mid-year, and spring. But again, knowing that just for this beginning here of fall of 2024, it's optional here as this is getting rolled out and implementation is beginning. Okay, let's go into getting started, some things you'll need to think about here. So if you don't have a training account, you will need to seek out to see if someone in your district, each district is getting a training account, and then from there, folks within that district can use that same training account. So you'll want to check and see if there's a training account already. But if you don't have one and you know that you're the person who needs to request one, right here you can see this QR code. You can use that to request a training account. I know that there were quite a few requests coming through, so I think they're up to date now. But if you don't have one and you know you need one, you can use that for one per district there. Now, again, if you don't have a training account for today, then just watch me. I will guide you through it, and then you can go back and try it on your own later, or work through the pieces that you're going to actually need. The training account that I'm going to use today, I'm going to go in as the account manager. So I'll have access to everything within my training account. But in your real accounts, you're going to want to start thinking through who needs what type of access. So let me just talk you through what we have, and then you can decide the folks in the roles in your buildings and in your districts who needs that type of access. So the account level access, the account manager, that's the person who is going to be managing, kind of at the highest level for for your AimsWeb account, managing all those permissions and settings and that sort of thing. Under that, we have a district level manager or we have a school level manager. So if you have people in your districts who need to be able to read and write the data, or if they need to be able to accomplish some tasks in their manager access, gives them the view of, at the district level, it gives them the view of all the classes and student data across the district. Of course, at the school level, that gives them access to all the classes and data at the school level. If those folks need to be able to test students, if they need to be able to make some changes, then they would need manager access. If it's somebody that you think they need access to see the information, but they are not the person who's going to be going in there to help test or that sort of thing, then you can consider giving those folks reporter access. So it's view only, read only access. So they can see things, but they wouldn't have the access to actually do the testing, that sort of thing. And then at the class level, we have what's called teacher access. So a lot of times, of course, it is the actual classroom teacher or the teacher of record. You can give them access so that they can see and do everything they need to do with that roster of students that they serve. So it's a way to kind of lock down the access to many students' data. Okay, so you have to, every district is going to look a little different depending on the folks that you have and the roles that they need to accomplish. If you have someone who needs to help complete some testing across a school, then maybe consider that they need to be a school manager. If you have someone who needs to be able to help with some testing across the district, consider that they might need to be a district manager. If you have somebody who needs to test their class and really that's all they need access to, then probably a teacher is what you're going to give them. There is also the class reporter access if you would have that need for someone to view just a very specific class roster, but not be able to edit or complete any testing there. Okay, I'm going to go into the training account and I'm going to show you what this all looks like. So I'm going to give you a tour of the account, and then I'm going to go into the help file. But again, I realize that probably a pressing question for a lot of you is, okay, but how do we get set up? So just know that all districts should have automatic rostering based on the data that's provided to DPI. So DPI and Pearson are going to be working together to get your students rostered into AimswebPlus. And I think district assessment coordinators should have received a welcome email about getting started. If you didn't receive that information, I'll show you in a few minutes. I'll go in and show you where you can request that information if anybody still needs it. But so DPI and Pearson are going to work together to import the student rosters. You can also go in and set up your teacher users or the user rosters for folks who are going to be using that information. So I'll show you that when I go into the help library here in just a minute. Okay, but let me jump out of that. Okay. So hopefully you can see here on my screen. Now I am logging into a training account. So for the training account, I'm up here in the UAT app.aimswebplus.com. That's where I went. It's a separate URL from the actual live accounts. So if you haven't used a training account before, all this is in the information that will be shared with you to access your training account. But just be aware it is totally separate from your actual real account. So if you want to do any practicing, checking things out, exploring, you can do that in the training account. However, it looks just like what you would or can anticipate seeing for your real account. So when you get to the AimsWeb login page, you will see login information here where I can plug in my customer ID. I can put in my username and my password, which I will do here in just a minute. If your district is opting for a single sign-on for your teachers and other users, for example, if you have Clever or you have Google single sign-on, then those folks in those districts would bypass this and just go straight into login with your single sign-on through Clever or whatever it might be. The other thing I just want to say here, just a little pro tip, if you are going to be managing folks who are not using single sign-on, and they're going to need to put in their customer ID, their username, and their password, you're going to want to just make sure folks can manage passwords for themselves. So just be aware if a person logs into AimsWeb and they use the wrong password or can't remember the password and they're trying to guess it, 3 times is going to lock up that account because we do want to protect that data. We don't want anybody getting in who really shouldn't be in there. But if a teacher is trying to log in and they are not successful 2 times, then you're going to want to just guide them to click forgot password here, and that will just send a link to the email that's associated with that teacher or that person, and that will let them reset their password. Otherwise, you're going to have a manager come in, an AimsWeb manager come in and unlock those folks. So that just kind of helps with the flow a lot of times. So. Okay, I'm going to go into my training account here. So I just plugged in my customer ID. I already have my username and my password saved. So then I'm going to click login. And then hopefully you can see here on your screen the login landing page here. So let me just take you on a quick little tour of what you're going to have available to you. In AimsWeb, these buttons across the top, so you can see there's the benchmark tab or the benchmark button. Fortunately, if you're using AimsWeb for the screener, then you're going to spend almost all of your time there on the benchmark, and that is right where it takes you when you log in. So that's a very convenient feature. If you were using AimsWeb for some progress monitoring, then of course that monitoring button is where you would go. If you were using additional screeners, of course, you could go there. Once you have some data collected, you might be interested in the individual reports or the group reports. So you could explore those tabs. And then, of course, we have student management and account management over here. You're not really going to spend that much time in those areas. I will show you a little bit later. The account management, we are going to go there to get the list of login credentials for the students. So we'll circle back to that in a little while. But really, if you've got folks who are getting into AimsWeb because they need to complete that screening testing, they're going to spend most of their time right here on the benchmark. Okay, if you look at the upper right-hand corner, just a couple of things over here. AimsWeb is set up on a filter system. So I said look at the upper right corner, but if you look back at the left-hand side, this set of filters, whatever I request is, and then click refresh here or view and refresh, that's what's going to populate right here on the screen. And then if I wanted to print that report, download the report, save any of that information, I can use the buttons in the upper right-hand corner to do that. And when those files are ready, right here on that, there's a little notification bell right here. And you could just see I had an orange notification telling me that I had a file that was ready. So anything you need to generate is going to be upper right-hand corner, and then you click on the little notification bell to open up whatever it is you had requested. folks will see their usernames in the upper right-hand corner, and then to the far right, there's the little arrow pointing to the right. That's the log out button. So I'm not going to click it right now, but that is where you're going to want to make sure folks are logging out when they have completed their AimsWeb task that they need to do. Okay, let me just show you. I'm going to generate one list here. So let me go into, I'm going to pull a first grade class here, and I want to look at early literacy. So I'm right over here in the filters, and I'm just going from top to bottom. I'm making some selections. So I'm in my elementary school. I'm looking at first grade. I'm looking specifically here at what we've labeled here, class 1A. For the battery, I'm looking at early literacy. The system knows that it's fall of 2024. I'm going to look at my scores compared to the national comparison, and I'm looking for percentiles as my display. So when I click view and refresh, you will see here in just a minute that my students will populate, and then any scores that I had collected would be here as well. Here we go. So of course, this is all fictional data, but you can see my list of students here in this main section. Now I'm looking at a first grade class. I'm looking at the early literacy information here. So this section right here in the middle is reflecting the composite score for the students. So if I scroll down, I can see generally how my list of students is performing in the area of early literacy for first grade. If I scroll over to the far right side, I can see if I wanted to or if I needed to measure by measure, I could look and see what information has been collected. So for letter, word, sound fluency, letter naming fluency, and so on. You can see here on my screen, I don't have any information in a lot of these, but I do have some oral reading fluency scores. So I could scroll over to the right and look at those specifically for students. I could, if I wanted to, also resort that information so that it ranks it all that here at the top of my screen so that I can see how my students are performing, in this case, in oral reading fluency. Okay, I'll show you how to collect this information here just a little bit. Okay, let me take you into the help file. So how to get to the help file or the help library, you're going to click in the bottom right-hand corner where it says, how can we help? And how can we help is a nice thing is that it opens up right to whatever screen you were previously on. So I was on the benchmark comparison screen. So the how can we help opened up benchmark screening information to see did you have questions about benchmarking and so on. Let me just show you how things are oriented, and then I'll point out some key information where it is. In the help file, you'll see these headings across the top. So start here, test materials, excuse me, benchmarking, progress monitoring, and so on. If that's not showing up, sometimes with the way folks have things sized on their screens, you might not see these headings, in which case you will have a little widget to the side that you can click on that will also give you that information. So it's there. It might just look a little different. Excuse me. Or you can just search right in the search bar if there's something specific that you need. Okay, so for today, let's point out the key information. Number one is going to be, let's actually go over to the rosters. So let me. Here we go. So to find the roster information, if you're somebody who's keen to find this out, you might want to jot down the steps that I'm showing. I'll repeat it a couple times. So I'm in the help file. I go over to manuals and training. I hover down onto training. And then you'll see that when I hover on that, I can see some other options. It's right down here, roster and user import templates. So let me say it again. I went to the help file. by clicking in the bottom right-hand corner, how can we help? I went to training. I went to roster and user import templates. And then when I get to this, there's you can see there the user import template. And then there's also information on the how to import those user files. So if you know that you need to work on that, importing those users, then this is where you'll find all the information that spells out what needs to happen. It includes also the templates there that you would need. Okay, so let me say it one more time. When you're in AimsWeb, you go in the bottom right-hand corner and you click How Can We Help? That takes you to the Help library. You go over to Manuals and Training, go down to Training, and then choose Roster and User Import Templates. And then from there, you can click to see more information about the import user files and the user import template. Okay, so that's one piece that you're going to want to make sure that you know about. The other thing is are the test materials. So the test materials are what needs to happen is you're going to need to print out some what we call stimulus materials for any of the DRFs, the digital record forms. You don't need to print anything for the TestNav, the vocabulary test and TestNav, but you will need to print out the stimulus forms. For example, the passages, if you're doing letter naming fluency, the page that has the letters on them, that sort of thing. That needs to be printed out, and that in all that stuff is found right here under test materials, benchmark stimulus books. So I go to test materials, I go to benchmark stimulus books, and when I click on these, you can see right here that I can choose early literacy and reading. And then of course from here, then you would go through and print out whatever it is that you need. So there's the early literacy stimulus book for pre-K for the fall, or we have it listed here as pre-K, but for your 4K for the fall, 4K for the winter, 4K for spring. Here you can see kindergarten, fall, winter, spring. If I scroll on down, I can see the early literacy stimulus book for first grade. And then remember, second and third grade, they don't need any other measures printed out for their screening except the oral reading fluency. So for second and third grade, you would come right here to oral reading fluency, the benchmark stimulus book for second grade, and then the benchmark stimulus book for third grade. Okay, be aware that, like I said earlier, AimsWeb has a lot of other measures. So if you download and print out the stimulus book, it is going to, well, depending on which one you pick, but it's likely going to include other information that you're not required to administer. So what you're going to want to do is probably download the stimulus book and then go through and cross-check which measures are we giving for kindergarten. So which pages from that stimulus book do we need to make sure that we have copies of? Okay. And again, when you're making copies, typically you would make one set of printed materials for each tester, for each teacher who is administering the test. It's not a consumable type of thing where you need a set for each student. Once you have them printed out, you just keep the same form and you slide it in front of the student. And then when the next student comes along, you take that same form and put it in front of them. So, okay. So make sure that you're crystal clear on where to find the test materials. It's under test materials, benchmark stimulus books, and then navigate to whichever ones you need to make sure you're ready to administer. The other important, well, there's a lot of important information, but one of the other important things that you need to be able to find in the help file are the administration and scoring instructions, administration and scoring guides. So if I go back over to manuals and training, then right here, the top option here says AimswebPlus Comprehensive Manual. So if I click on that comprehensive manual, again, that's under manuals and training. I have a lot of information here, but if I scroll down, I'm looking for the administration and scoring for the early literacy measures. And then also, so that's chapter 5. And then if I go down to chapter 6, I also would need the reading administration and scoring for, it shows here grades 2 through 8. You'll need that for your second and third graders. So what is the administration and scoring guide? This includes all the information that you need or that a teacher would need to know before administering the test. So what's the script that they need to say, which is also going to show up on the screen, but they would need to be familiar with what they need to say and do. Scoring rules, what counts as a correct and incorrect, what happens if the student misses a lot? Is there a discontinue rule, and when is that triggered? All of that is spelled out in the administration and scoring guide. Again, either the reading one for your second and third grade or the early literacy administration and scoring guide here. That's going to be the one that you need for your 4K, kindergarten, and first grade. So if you're thinking through how am I going to get folks up to speed with what they need to know, all the information that they need can be found right here in these administration and scoring guides. Okay, so you can point them here, you can walk them through these components that are all found here under manuals and training. Now, I do also want to mention if you have folks who they need this information, but they would prefer to view it in an on-demand webinar. I'm sorry, not a webinar, an on-demand video. Okay, let me say that again. If they would need to view this administration and scoring information, but they want it, instead of reading it from the document, they want to view an on-demand video, then you come right over here to manuals and training, go down to training, and then if I scroll down here, I've got administration and scoring videos. So it is essentially the same information that's in that administration and scoring guide. It's just in a video format. So if you have folks who would need it or would appreciate having access to it in that configuration, then you can send them here. Manuals and training, and then administration and scoring videos. Okay, and then while I'm here, the last thing that I'll mention is are the quick step guides and videos. So it's the same spot. I'm under manuals and training. I went down to training, and then I navigated down to quick step guides and videos. A lot of times when folks are getting started with AimsWeb, they can feel anxious about, I'm not sure I remember where to go and where to click and how do I set up a TestNav test? How do I do a DRF? How do I find the results? That kind of thing. The quick step guides and videos spell out in 1 to 2 page documents. They spell out step by step how to accomplish those different tasks. So if I go over here so I clicked on quick step guides and videos. If I go to benchmarking and scroll down, you can see maybe somebody's not sure how to log into AimswebPlus. I could generate a little 1-page form that shows exactly how to log in. Maybe a lot of times what you'll come across is folks who need a reminder on how to create a TestNav ticket or how to administer a DRF or that digital record form. So let me just show you one of these. I think this is a 2-page. Yeah, this is and some of them are even shorter, but it's a 2-page document that says, were you trying to administer a digital record form? Here are the steps you need to complete. And then what a lot of folks find particularly useful is right down here, you've got the screenshot that shows, for example, step 1, click here, step 2, click here. There we go. I'm scrolling too quickly. So just know that you can use that for yourself, or if you need to help support other folks who are using these, point them to the quick step guides. Okay. Let me go back and okay, so now that we've had a tour of the platform, let's go back and think through, okay, let's actually collect some data. So let me, okay, so let's do digital record forms first, since that's the way that most of your uh, information is going to be collected. Then we'll talk about TestNav. But for the digital record forms, or the DRFs, again, remember, for 4K, we're talking about the initial sounds measure and the letter word sound fluency. You can see here for kindergarten, for first grade. And then for second and third grade, the only DRF you need is the oral reading fluency. And then again, you also need that vocabulary, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But this is the way that you're going to collect this information. I'm just going to demonstrate the oral reading fluency, but the way that I access it, you'll see would be the same process that you would do for any of these other digital record form measures. Okay, so let's say, for example, we've got a first grade teacher. She needs to complete her screening. So what is a teacher going to need in order to actually do that testing or do that screening? So they're going to need to know how to administer and score. And again, the way that they can know all the scoring rules and administration guidelines is to go to that administration and scoring guide or to watch those videos. They're going to need two, in this case, for oral reading fluency, we're having them read 2 passages. So they will need a hard copy of those passages to put in front of the students. And then the teacher would need access to that student in her account to be able to launch into the DRF. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do right now. So let me jump back over to all right, so I'm back in the platform. Let me refresh my screen. Again, I always have to double check my filters. So right now I'm going to demonstrate a first grade oral reading fluency. But again, this process is going to be the same for any of the DRFs. So I'm looking at first grade. I need early literacy. Yep. Here's my class. And then I'm ready to assess. I'll just use the first student on the list. So Ava Alexander, I'm ready to assess Ava. So right here under the assess column, I'm going to click on that little paper and pencil icon. So your teachers who are doing this, they're going to need to navigate to their class of students, find the student that they're ready to test, click on the paper and pencil. Okay. Now these measures in real life, maybe I would just go in order, but for today, you can see here, I'm just skipping over to the oral reading fluency. So the platform is asking me, did I want to administer auditory vocabulary? Nope, I'd like to skip to oral reading fluency. So when I get to the one I want, administer oral reading fluency, I'm going to say yes. And then it's going to open up a separate tab. You'll see this load right up here. And I can see, yep, this is Ava Alexander. This is oral reading fluency. She's in first grade. I need to put, and it tells me right here, I need to put form number 1 in front of the student. So that hard copy that had been printed out, and we're keeping in a file folder or a binder or something like that. I need to get that physical hard copy and just put it in front of Ava. And then here on my screen, I have some information that I'm going to need to know, like check the passage to see if there are any notes about it. That tells me what I need to do. And then it actually gives me the script that I should read. So I can see right here that I would say, when I say begin, start reading aloud at the top of the page, and I would continue reading. I can collapse those instructions. And then what I see on my screen is the text that the student is going to be reading on their hard copy. So again, the student is not on a screen, but the teacher or whoever's administering the test, they're on a screen watching and following along. Okay. Now, I had already enabled the microphone here. When you log in the first time, you'll get a little message that says, can AimsWeb access your microphone? If you say yes, then when you start the assessment, so I just clicked start assessment, and the timer starts running, then it is actively recording the audio of anything that's happening right here while the test is running. So it's designed so that not on a regular basis, but in those one-off cases where you might need to go back and listen to something again, you'll have that audio file just immediately afterwards if you needed to check that. So while I've been talking, my timer is counting down. And if I were assessing Ava, I would be following along. If she said Bob is a big dig instead of dog, I can click it. All I have to do is mark that it was an error. He is a big lab, I don't know, Mike. I could click it. Now, if I wanted to also associate the type of error, like that was an omission or that was a substitution, I could put that, but all that's required is just that you mark that it was an error. Okay. Now, I talked for a minute because I can see here it pops up, the time has expired. It's telling me to select the last word attempted. So I'm going to say, okay. I'm just going to pick the last word. And you can see that it gives me a little flag here for that's the last word. Now, a lot of teachers feel nervous, like, what if I didn't catch everything or I need to go back and fix it? As long as I'm on this page, I can go back and say, oh, I didn't have a chance to click that word, or I clicked mix, but I didn't mean to click that. I meant to click the word next to it, or whatever you need to do. As long as you're on this page, you can make sure that it accurately represents what the student did. And then I can click next, and it's going to take me to the next form. Now, for the sake of time and demonstrating today, I'm just going to quickly move us to, here, I'm going to click the last word. Let's say I had gone through the two passages. Here, there's story 1 if I needed to go back and listen to that one, or story 2 if I needed to listen to the audio. Otherwise, if I'm done and I've marked it, then I can click right here, score. And then it gives me the results here, but actually a better, easier way to see it is if I click OK, it takes me back to that home page, and you'll see that it's going to put the scores here on this form. Now, Ava was the first student, but now that we have the oral reading fluency score, it's going to start ranking her by, it's going to plug her into the list, ranking her by her scores. So she's not the first on the list anymore. I could scroll down. There she is. Ava Alexander right here. I can see her scores. If I scroll over, I can see apparently based on those fake scores that I just entered, she's at the 11th percentile. Okay. Okay, so those are the steps. That's the way that you're going to administer that digital record form. It's the same for all the other measures. You click the paper pencil, you click on the test that you want to administer, it opens up that form so you see it on your screen. And then once you finish and save, finish and score, it brings you back to AimsWeb and pretty immediately gives you the results. Okay, so those are the steps for the digital record form. Now let's talk about TestNav. So for TestNav, we are only talking about your second and third grade students. TestNav, if you're not familiar, I'm not sure if you are familiar with TestNav, but it is a testing platform where students can log in and get access to tests that have been assigned to them so that they take the test online in a secure environment. Okay, so TestNav, for you all, again, the measure that is going to be required is vocabulary. Now in AimsWeb, AimsWeb for second and third grade has a reading battery that also includes reading comprehension. You'll see it when I push out the reading battery to my student that I'm going to demonstrate here in just a minute. The reading comprehension is not required for you all. Of course, if you wanted to administer it, you could, but the only required piece is going to be that vocabulary piece. I'll show you what it looks like, but here you can see, we're going to see in just a minute, the student is going to have a login screen that looks something like this. You can set up single sign-on if you would like to. And if you would like to set that up, then when your students get to the TestNav login screen, then they would just sign in with ClassLink or with Clever or whatever they have for their single sign-on. If you don't set up single sign-on, then students are going to need a username and a password. I'll show you where to get that. But then your students would enter that right here under username and password. And then once they access the test, this is just showing you, just so you have a little bit of an understanding of what it's going to look like. On the student screen for vocabulary, they would see that sentence, or that's enough in the sentence to give them the part of speech, and then they need to find from the multiple choice answers what word is the closest meaning to, in this case, courage. Okay, so they would click, hopefully they would click brave, and then they could click next to get to the next question. Okay, so let's say, again, this is going to be for your second and third grade. So today I'm going to go and show you what it's going to look like for third grade. So let's say we've got a third grade teacher who needs to complete the screening. Let's say she's already done the oral reading fluency. So now we're ready to do the vocabulary test. So what are you going to need in order to actually administer the vocabulary test? You're going to need your student names and passwords if you're not using single sign-on. If you're using single sign-on, you can bypass that step. The teacher's going to need access to her class in AimsWeb, and then she's going to need to know, of course, how to administer the test and what the directions are. That can all be found in the administration and scoring guide. And then the teacher is going to need to unlock the test. So let me show you what this looks like. Okay, now I'm in as a manager, so I'm going to move from my first grade class over to my third grade class. And I want reading instead of math. So I'm going to click view and refresh. Okay, so here you can see now, these are, of course, these are fictional kids. Now we have a different Ava who is a third grader. But you can see how, or maybe you're noticing how the screen looks different here. Instead of the paper and pencil icon in the assess column, now we have tickets. So for the TestNav measures, or for your vocabulary measure, you're going to unlock the ticket, which assigns the test to the student. And then we're going to have the student log in and take the test. Okay. Let me show you how you can get your usernames and passwords for your students. Okay, so this is something that you would need to do. So I know sometimes folks have questions about this, so let me just lay this out here. Usernames and passwords to log in to TestNav, they are created by the AimsWeb platform. So you can't say, hey, we just want to create our own and give everybody the same. We can't do that. You have to take what AimsWeb generates for each individual student. The good news is you can generate all those in one document, and it doesn't change. So across the school year, if you have your third graders log into TestNav in the fall and then they come back in the middle of the year, it's the same username and password that they used in the fall. Okay, so let me just show you. If I go over to account management, so this is the one time that we're going to leave the benchmark button. But if I go over to account management and I go on my drop down menu here, if I choose test assignment list. Okay, now what I'm doing right now, if you are having your students in single sign-on, they won't have to do this. If you're not going to set up single sign-on, then somebody needs to be able to generate this list and make sure that you distribute the login credentials to the students. Okay, so I went to account management. On the drop-down, I chose test assignment list. And then in the filters, I would navigate to the group of students that I need to, who do I need their logins? Well, right now, apparently it's our class 3A. So I'm going to I'm going to click view and refresh. This is going to show me all the students who are, in this case, in that particular class, class 3A. It gives me some information, but really what I care about at the moment are the username and passwords columns, those two columns. Okay, so these usernames and these passwords, I need to somehow communicate that to my students. So you can pick whatever workflow works for you. Some folks will generate like individual tickets. I'll show you where you can generate through AimsWeb pages that put 6 tickets on a page, and then you would maybe physically cut those apart and pass them out to the students. There's one where you can generate them onto labels and stick them on a folder or whatever it is that you need, that you might be using. But in some way, we have to make sure that each individual student gets their unique username and then the password for them so that they can log into TestNav. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to say, choose everybody on this list. And then if I come to download report, I can choose to just download this information into like a spreadsheet format if that works for me and I'm going to somehow generate it that way. Or if I want the actual test assignment tickets, I can come down here to tickets and let me just show you what the box format looks like here. But I can get a box format, labels, or strips. Like if I'm going to go to the big paper cutter and cut strips apart and distribute those, whichever way that I need it, I can generate it there. I think I had one, well, there's the one we were waiting for. I just got my notification. If I show you what this report looks like, here, let me see if I can open, here we go. Can you see, this is the box format. So I've got David Anderson, who's 3rd grade. There's his username and password. I got Daisy Andrews, she's 3rd grade. There's her username and password. So somehow I would need to, in this case, probably I would cut those apart and distribute those. Okay. It is a little bit more work on the front end, but again, remember, you only really need to do it this one time at the beginning of the year. And then when David and Daisy come back for mid-year, they'll use that same information, the same login and the same password. Okay. So let's assume that we had generated those usernames and passwords. I'm going to go back to the benchmark screen. The other thing that the teacher needs to do, or whoever is administering this test, they need to unlock the tickets. So let's say that I have this whole class that I need to unlock. Now you can see here, I've got some students who actually do already have some scores. But for most of your students, in most cases, you're going to be unlocking the whole class all at one time. So again, I'm going to choose everybody. So click the button to choose all. And then in the upper right-hand corner, I'm going to click unlock. And then I'll give it a minute and you'll see that it's going to unlock those tickets for us. So here we go. Now, notice that the tickets went from blue to green. So blue tickets means that it's still locked. If I had forgotten to unlock and I told the student to go log into TestNav, when they get to TestNav, there would be no test for them to take. There wouldn't be anything they could click on. But now that I have unlocked these tickets, then I can have students go into TestNav on their device, and then they can access the test. Okay, so now I'm going to step between, I've been showing you what the teacher side of things looks like. Let me show you what it's going to look like from the student perspective. So I'm going to play the role of 3rd grader David here. So I'm going to open his ticket. Okay. In your real accounts, you would generate that test assignment list and generate everybody's username and password. For the sake of showing you today, if I click on that ticket, it also does tell me the student's username and password. So just for the purpose of demonstrating to you today, I'm going to leave that up so that I can access his username and password. So I'm going to go to a different tab. I'm going to go to testnav.com just to demonstrate this for you. And so when I get to testnav.com, I see a screen that looks like this, where I see lots of different assessments. You will guide your students to AimswebPlus right here. So it's on the left-hand side, right here, AimswebPlus. So your students will click the AimswebPlus, and this opens up that screen. You saw a view of this a little bit earlier. And then right here, I need that username and password. So let me just jump back over here and get David's username. I think that's right. And then let me grab his password. All right, and then I'm going to click sign in. And I'm already in. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, I'm in as David Anderson, because just a minute ago, I unlocked the test ticket for the reading battery. Then you can see that as a student, I have access to go into a reading comprehension test, and I have access to go into a vocabulary test. Okay, if you remember what I said a little while ago, when you, just the way that AimsWeb opens up these batteries, when you unlock the ticket, it pushes out both the reading comprehension and the vocabulary. So if you wanted to have your students take reading comprehension, they could. It's not part of what's required for Act 20. So you would just make sure that your students are clicking start for the vocabulary measure. And I'm not going to take the whole test, but let me just show you a little bit about what it looks like. So I clicked start. I can see here it's giving me some information about what's coming. The teacher also, in the administration and scoring guide, there's the script of what the teacher would be reading. They would be reading verbatim, but it's basically something that says you're about to take a test on a computer, and then they would just read what is in that administration and scoring guide. And then the student clicks start. They'll get a practice question, and then they'll get the actual vocabulary test. So let me just show you what this looks like. So you have information here on the screen. When I'm ready to go to the next screen, right up here, I'll click next. Now, if a student needed test accommodations, right up here in the upper right-hand corner, if you click on this little person icon, in TestNav for the vocabulary test, the options would be to change the background and the foreground color, to enable a magnifier, and to enable the show line reader mask, so that so that they can kind of block off the page just to go read down the screen. So if you have students who have that written into maybe IEPs or 504 plans, then that you would help them access that from right here. Also, for everybody, read aloud is enabled. For the vocabulary measure, read aloud, or I should say text to speech, is enabled for the instructions and for the test itself. So that is over here on the right-hand side. So imagine that your students are logged in, they have headphones or earbuds or something so that everybody is able to hear, they're not distracting each other, but then they could click play to hear that read aloud to them there. Let me just show you the practice question. So I clicked to navigate to the next screen. Here's the practice question. The student would read through there. A chore is most like and then pick from the multiple choice. And you can see it shows them right up there. Now there was only one item for the practice, so it shows I've completed that, and then they would navigate to go to the next part. So it will also show them right up here how far they are in the test. Vocabulary is technically untimed, so students can work through at their own pace here from screen to screen. Okay, Now I'm going to go back over to the platform. I'm not going to take the whole time to take that test, but I do just want to point out, notice now that I signed in as David Anderson. So if I go back and get into the teacher's view, I can see that there's a little, instead of that ticket, there's a little lock icon here. So this is telling me that David Anderson has accessed the test. I can see that he has started testing. When he completes the testing, I could refresh this screen and his scores would show up here. If anything happened during the testing and he, for whatever reason, got out of the test and needed to go back in to take the test, right here on this little lock icon, if I click on it, then I could start him over on that test to let him get back into his TestNav test. Okay. So again, what's required for your second and third grade students, whoever's administering, the teacher would need to go to the account management tab, generate the test assignment list to print out those usernames and passwords. And then the other thing that teacher would need to do is click here to select all the students. And then, well, these are already unlocked, but I could come right up here to unlock those students when I'm ready to have them take the test. And then I would just have my students log in to TestNav on their devices and proctor the room while they are actually taking the vocabulary test. Okay, so we took a look at the what it looks like for the digital record form. We took a look at what it looks like for TestNav. We did just a general tour of the platform. And then hopefully you got a clear understanding of what's in the help library and where to find things like the test materials, those user import templates, and the administration and scoring guide information. Okay, so what I want to do now, kind of in the wrap up phase here, I want to make sure that everybody is aware of what you have available, where you can access help, and up-to-date information as this is implemented here this fall. So first of all, know that, of course, we're talking about the screening here. Once you've completed the screening, then you'll need some information about how do I read and interpret that. Your CSAs have had the benchmark essentials training, or they had the opportunity to have that training, and forthcoming for them is going to be some training on understanding how to use the data, what's included. So that part is coming. Also, for your teachers, as far as how am I going to get teachers trained or what do they need to do, everything that a teacher would need is in the help file. So when we just went into the help file, the administration and scoring guides or the administration and scoring on-demand videos, plus the test materials, that's what a teacher would need to get all the background information to be able to administer these tests. We are also making available to your teachers the online learning course, and we would encourage teachers to use this. So let me show you where you can find this. So there's going to be some additional supports for teachers here on, and I think this might be in coming to you in the chat. I'm not sure if it's there already, but we have a specific Wisconsin AimswebPlus site. You're going to want to get the link for this site from the chat and bookmark it so that you can come back, refer back to this. Think about this site. It looks like this here. Think about this as one-stop shop for all the most up-to-date information for things you might need to know, like, hey, I need access to AimsWeb. We're still in the rostering phase. We need some training, and so on. So let me show you what's here. So when you come to this site, you'll see, let me scroll down a little bit. You can see the There are some links here already for the screener window guidance. You can see those window dates. There's some information here about the customer support, or if you need technical support, there are the contacts there. But if I come right down here to access and support. So again, DPI and Pearson are working together to roster your students into the AimsWeb platform. So right here on this site, that's where you're going to find the most updated information about where we are in that process. So again, if you have this site bookmarked, then you can just come quickly and check it here. Also, I mentioned earlier, district assessment coordinators, if you should have received some communication about getting your account information, but if you hadn't or you aren't able to locate it, you can come to this site and come right here to section number 1, and you can click there to contact customer support, tell them what you're looking for, what you need, and they can make sure that they get you the access that you need. If I scroll on down, again, remember that the DPI and Pearson are working together to import your students' rosters. But as far as teacher accounts, you can create those. I showed you in the help file where you could go to manuals and training, go down to training, find the roster and user import templates, but you can find it there. That gives you some background information about what you'll need, what steps will need to be taken there. And then if I scroll on down to section 3, training, so we have some, of course, here, you're here today for a live webinar. A recording of the webinar will be posted here under on demand. So again, if you needed to double check and listen to the recording, or somebody else that you needed to point them to the recording, they can access it here. Again, if you haven't received a training account for your district, you could come right here to request a training account, again, one for the district. And then below that, what pointed me to this site was the support we were talking about for teachers. So we're making this available for teachers. They can come right here to the online learning curriculum. They can self-register here, and this is a little bit more of a structured walkthrough of what teachers will need to know and be able to do in order to complete the benchmark screening, but it's not required. You also can find all this information in the help file. So if you're thinking about getting folks up to speed on everything, you can think I can direct them to the help file, or you can point them here to self-register, and then they can individually, they can go through the online learning curriculum that will also just step by step walk them through the process.
Hey, Denise.
Yes.
There was a request to show, if you're able to, what it's like in TestNav to like turn on the text to speech. Are you able to do that quickly? Yeah. Okay.
I think so. Let me see. Let me just, I'm going to navigate to a different screen just to see if no, it didn't time me out. So yes, can you, okay. If you can see my screen, I just jumped back into TestNav. I happen to be on item here, number 1. So I can see it on my screen, but over here, if I click the play button, you'll hear it read it.
To bake means to trick, cook, shop, learn.
All right, and then I would pick whatever I'm going to pick here and then move to the next screen. Same thing there. I could click to play. For the vocabulary measure, because we want to know if they know the meaning of the word, they can click the text to speech for both the item and the answer options. Also, they can click text to speech on the instructions. So, yep. Let me jump back over to, there are a couple more things I just want you to know that are on the Wisconsin AimsWeb site. So again, if I keep scrolling down, so you saw information about access and then rostering and then training content. So if you scroll on down, just know that this is going to be a living page. So there will be updates here as they are, as information is pertinent to you to go out. So if you have questions about accessibility to the test, there's some information there. I imagine there are some folks who have questions, for example, about Spanish measures and those sorts of things. There's a section here. Now it's not on the site yet, but it will be coming. So you can check the Wisconsin specific site for information about your multilingual learners and so on here on the screen. So let me scroll back up on this page.
Hey, everybody. I'm going to just jump in for a second. I'm Barb Novak. I'm the director of the Office of Literacy. I know many of you folks on this call have multiple roles. I was emailing yesterday with someone who is the district assessment coordinator, the district librarian, and the district reading specialist. I know you want to visit Pearson's website every day, but I also know that might not be possible. So we're going to condense all of the updates for you weekly in the DAC Digest. If you are a DAC, a district assessment coordinator, you automatically get that DAC Digest. If you are a DAC and you have other people in your building, like your other people in your district, like your literacy coach or your reading teachers or your elementary school principals, please feel free to forward them that weekly DAC Digest. We'll also put information that's relevant to district technology coordinators in the DAC Digest as well. So that's really going to be our one-stop shop for keeping all of you up to date about what's changing, because the website is changing daily.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Novak. I appreciate to point folks to, if they check that weekly, then yes, I know it can be a lot to manage, to juggle all the pieces. So, yeah. Speaking of the where to go to get support, I do want to make sure that folks know, again, you can check the website up there at the top of the website. It did have contact information for customer support and technical support. Check the chat. It should be coming out to you, or if it's not already, it hasn't been shared with, if it hasn't already been shared with you. But here you can see the numbers. There's a training email and an AimsWeb support email. You also have the QR code right here on the screen. So I'll give you a minute to make sure that you've captured that information. This information is also on that Wisconsin specific website. So I'll give you a second here. And then we have a survey here. So let me just mention this, making sure that we're providing what you need. And I know a lot of this information, a lot of what folks need is just, we're ready to get things up and going. So we realize that. But as far as the support you need, if you could use I think there's a link that's going to be coming to you in the chat, or if you could use the QR code to give us some feedback on today's webinar to see if this is what you need when you get in there and you have to choose the presenter. My name is Denise Ricks, but we can use that information to know how best to support you going forward. So that would also be helpful. Before we finish up, let me ask the Pearson team or the DPI team, are there any questions or anything that we need to address with the whole group? Anything that came up?
I don't want to address any questions with the whole group. I just want to say thank you. I see you. I see you. Oh, it makes me teary. I see you in my inbox. I see you in schools with kids. And I know that this is really, really hard. You know how to screen kids. You know how to teach kids. And we are asking you to do that with a new platform. And the information that is available about that is changing every day and changing by the minute. And I'm here for you, and Pearson is here for you. And this is not the big work. The big work is making sure that every kid can read and that every kid loves to read.
We appreciate everyone's patience so much. We're working so hard to get you what you need as quickly as we can.
Okay, so everybody make sure that from the information that's been shared through the chat or maybe notes that you've jotted down, make sure you know where to go for support or help from here. Otherwise, we will be seeing you as we're supporting you through the implementation, but we appreciate your time today and we'll wrap it up here today. So thank you, everybody.